I'll call the roll. Mr. Brennan? Mr. Brennan? Mr. Fergus?
Present.
Ms. Gleaton?
Present.
Ms. Herbert? Mr. Racio?
Hi, so do I need to say that I'm present, or do I, as part of the group, or am I just counted as someone who is on the board but visiting?
Now you really,
Mr. Ratio,
you know,
based on the bylaws, you are not an official member of the committee. So you are participating in your capacity as a board member who is
Right.
following the work of the committee, but not actually a member of the committee. So your presence unfortunately does not count as a quorum. The bylaws say that a quorum is the majority of the voting board members who are members of the committee. So if that is Mr. Brennan, Ms. Herbert, Mr. Fergus, Ms. Gleaton, and is there one additional
Ms.
board
Mood.
member?
We're waiting on Ms. Mood to arrive.
Okay, and so
All
right
right.
now, of the five, so there are 5 voting board members, and it appears right now that you have Mr. Fergus and Ms. Gleaton in person. Mr. Brennan dialed in. I think he's on mute, but assuming that he comes back in and
Here.
answers, okay, that he's present.
Okay,
So with 5 voting board members, you now have a quorum of 3 of the 5. And you can wait for Ms. Mood, but for quorum purposes, you don't have to wait for Ms. Mood.
all right. I hear that Mr. Brennan is present now. So we do have a quorum. I'll call the advisory members. Mr. Jenkins, Mr. Coon, Ms. Robinson. You have a quorum.
okay, on the adoption of the agenda, I'd like to amend the agenda to put it, 5F Lower Richland Route 47, since we discussed that at the last board meeting. Can you get a second?
I second it.
Okay, did everyone hear the motion? All right, I'll call the roll. Mr. Brennan,
Yes.
Mr. Fergus,
Yes.
Ms. Gleaton,
Yes.
Ms. Herbert, Ms. Mood, Mr. Racio, Mr. Jenkins, no, I'm done.
Milton Riders Association, do everybody want to speak for a minute?
I apologize for not being here during the board meeting a couple of weeks ago. It was just, scheduling was just impossible. The one thing I wanted to mention was that we had a rider who lives in the Northeast Columbia area who decided he wanted to take the bus to the airport. And he was thrilled riding the bus to the airport. Obviously had to come downtown, then take that bus out to the airport. And he's telling all of his friends that the bus goes to the airport every day. We've also heard from some riders who have asked that a bench be put on the corner of Zimmelcrest and Broad River, and to make that somewhat of a fast track installation. I know that it's on the list of potential benches, but the riders are experiencing some issues, so I asked that you do that. The Mercy, which is the mental health folks, they have been at one office on Rosewood near Kilburn and another office on Gregg Street between Hampton and Gervais. In January, they're going to be combining their offices to a place on Two Notch Road near Providence Hospital. I suspect that the 501 will increase in traffic, probably the 701 as well. But I just want to give you all a
And
heads
12
up.
there too, because they can get off down there on 12 too.
And 12.
I ride 12.
Yeah, that's right. So
Good exercise.
that happens in January, and I just want to give you all a heads up for that. And lastly, I want to take a personal moment to address Mr. Fergus. Mr. Fergus and I have had some issues over the years, but I want to apologize first of all for anything that I said to him that was bad, because it was. And also, I want to thank him for taking the lead on dealing with these phases, and especially phase 2 and phase 3. And we hope that we can work with him and the rest of the board in those matters. But I just want to personally thank you, Mr. Fergus, for doing that for us. Thank you.
Mr. Durst,
Yes.
the bench request on Broad River and Zimmercrest, is that inbound or outbound?
That's it now.
Inbound, okay, near the old BP station?
Yep.
Okay.
Adoption of the minutes. So moved.
I second it.
All right, I'll call the roll for the adoption of the minutes. Mr. Brennan,
Yes.
Mr. Burgess,
Yes.
Ms. Gleaton,
Yes.
Ms. Herbert, Ms. Mood, Mr. Racio. The motion carries.
If I could jump in here for just a minute, please. I hate to interrupt, but I was gonna talk to y'all a little bit before you approve the minutes. So I understand that Ms. Horacio was in attendance at the last board meeting and in fact voted. And after reviewing the bylaws today, my advice would be that she doesn't actually have an official vote as a member of the committee. But I also understand that none of the matters were controversial, and there was not like a split vote where Ms. Horacio's vote would have made a difference in outcome. And so I think that should be reflected as y'all approve the minutes. And if you'd like, I won't be able to do it today, but by Friday or even tomorrow, I could get y'all a little paragraph to include with, as you approve the minutes from last meeting, just to explain the role of Ms. Horacio. Does that
Okay.
sound like something that would work for y'all?
Yes, that'll be great.
I'll
Thank
do
you.
it. And I'm bouncing off. I don't think y'all need me for the substance of your meeting, but if anything comes up, you're welcome to give me a call.
Thank you.
All right, thank y'all. Bye-bye.
Okay.
Thank you. And I'll just stay on just to listen.
But I don't think that even my name should probably be called for the role, so that there's no confusion about who should be responding and who should not.
Yes, Ms. Teresi, I was thinking the same thing.
Okay, that sounds great. Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Burgess, for bringing that up. Sorry for any confusion.
Since Mr. Brennan is traveling, can we move that F up to A on the 5 and just get it out of the way so we can participate in it? I hear that.
Right, so
The Lower Richland Route 7.
that's fine with me.
Okay.
Is that all right? Anybody have an objection to that on the
Fine.
Okay. So you're asking to have,
But we put it in at F, so we need to move it up before 8, 5, 1, A1. And we'll discuss that on, how we reinstate that route, time frame or what down in the Lower Richland area. But that's in addition to whatever other modifications we can do with service in the Lower Richland area. So if
all right, so.
staff would just come to the board with that, we can just approve it at the next board meeting. We really don't have to go through it. And not unless somebody has some suggestions to the route that they need us to. But, you know, it just be, take pulling that reflex out and putting 47 back. That was a fixed route we took out. But staff can evaluate.
I'm running hard to catch up here. I apologize for
Get your
being,
breath.
for
Get
being
your
late.
breath.
But this is an additional item of 5F is where you are.
Yes.
And we're taking that out of order, and that's on the Lower Richland route.
Lower Richmond route, fixed route.
Okay, so I'm looking to see do we need to speak to that from the staff? Is Eric on?
Areas.
Yes, 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 I'm here. Just quick question, make sure I understand. Mr. Fergus, are you asking for the route to be reinstated as a fixed route for us to explore that option?
That's correct, but the entire Lower Richland transportation should be looked at. So if it's any amount of adjustments we can make, we should make them. You know, because 47 came out, was 47 was after the penny, right? Would have to be after the penny.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the one that's generating all the complaints from the Lower Richland, well, some of the complaints from the Lower Richland area. You know, and that was brought up at the last board meeting.
Yes, I remember. I think that we definitely can take a look at it and try to have some feedback to you. Because we do not have it today, would it be appropriate to come with the report in the board meeting? Or would you recommend that we just circle it back to the service committee?
I recommend that you come back to the board with it so we can approve it right then and there.
I agree, Madam Chairwoman.
Okay. All right. There's a couple of different factors that we definitely have to take into account. I think one of which is the number of operators that we would have available to run a fixed route service, but also the number of buses that we would have available. The reason why the route was reduced to a capacity was because the demand for ridership wasn't quite there, similar to what we were experiencing with the was it 93X, and also taking a look at that Route 97 going to Batesburg, Leesville. So that was one of the routes that was in that unique scenario where we didn't quite have enough to kind of keep that route going. But we certainly can take a look at it and explore what some of the options may be, especially if you are receiving those complaints and if I guess the route is building up a little bit more popularity to return to service.
So just to make sure that I'm clear on exactly what we're doing here. The discussion is when the proposal to the board to approve the phase 1 included some changes in the route to Lower Richland, but and in relation to the route to Sumter. Is that the one so that we were? No.
Me, I don't think they're related.
No, Madam Chair, actually, Route 47 now is a reflex route.
Correct.
That's ran by DART.
Correct.
Before it was a fixed route
Mhm.
in that area. So they're requesting it to take it back to a fixed route.
And the reason I want to be clear on this is because if it's something that's been a part of the phase 1 and the implementation and that we've discussed in the board meeting, that's I think we take one path. If this is a proposed new service change, that's not been, the public hadn't been noticed, you know, even that it's on the agenda for today, then I think we are in a position of saying, of having to take another route, path, and that would be that this would be a motion from the committee to the board that we that this has been requested, which I would expect the board to say, the committee's got to vet that before the board will take action on it. But so I think, if I'm right, that this is the only action we can take today is to say, to make that proposal to the board.
That's not correct. So,
Well, tell me.
if the board decides that something is right, regardless of what it is, the board can approve. You know, we can't usurp the authority of the board. This is a fixed route that was there where voters voted for, and we took it out and put flex route. That has nothing to do with Lexington route, Sumter route. That's a route in the lower Richmond area.
Mhm.
We're just putting service where Richland County voters are. That's all we're doing. And it doesn't have to be studied or reinvented. It's already there. We just, and Ms.
Jacobs.
Ms. Jacobs said he had something in Eastover about that flex route, and it wasn't very well attended. But very few people know what the flex route is. Very few board members know what flex route is.
Okay, so then with that background, would you make the motion that you want us to take to the
I
board?
just did.
Excuse me, Madam Chair, just one thing, even if we bring it to the board to implement, let's just say we were able to come up with a definitive plan of a way to move forward, we wouldn't be able to implement it until January, considering that the service window for the September service change is closed at this moment. They've already the drivers have already bidded, and Lenny can also shed light to this if you have any more information on it. But the window for opportunity to implement a new route, the door is pretty much closed on that because we're getting ready to implement the new service for the fall service change.
But,
That's important.
That's important, but what does 47 have to do with the new routes that are coming to Lucius Road?
Here's what I'm hearing Mr. Harris say, but let me be sure I got what you said was accurately. That if the board approves the motion that's been made, that the implementation date would have to be January because of I've been operating on for some time of not just making sporadic service changes scattered throughout the year, that they are made at specific intervals during the year where the work that RapDev has to do with riders and drivers and all of those things are done. And so particularly if we're talking about reinstating a route as a fixed route that's been operated by DART, that there are things that have to change in that. And all I'm hearing from Eric is that the time frame for any action the board makes would have the earliest implementation possible would be January.
The right person to ask, Mr. Cooksey.
Yeah, so
How
just,
long?
a quick correction. So the next service change, when we go into our next service, is actually September 10th.
September 10th.
However, the operators choose their work. They start reviewing that work August 9th. So from the 9th till about the 24th is when all the review takes place between RATP Dev, the union, the operators.
So we still have a small window.
It's extremely small because I would need to know, one, if there are additional operators, number of buses, because we have to design what they call the run cut around to include this route. Because what happens is if you bring it in after they've already chosen their routes, it may force us to have to repick. That's a whole nother process that interrupts the process. So it's a short, tight window, but I would need more details to.
What Eric is saying, Eric, are you saying that at this point, what we don't have is just the details? Is that right?
Essentially, so yeah, and to Lenny's point, we do three service changes per year: September, January, and May.
Right.
With the September timeframe, and by the time we get to the May board meeting, July board meeting, by that time, we would have already built out the schedules and the operators would be preparing to bid. So the window for opportunity to actually build out the schedule, design the route, put it back into place, and get it out in proper notice, it will, that window for opportunity is pretty tight. Right now, we're actually finalizing the schedules for September as we speak. The only thing they're waiting for is USC service routes, and that more so seals the deal. I'm not saying it is impossible. It is just a very, very tight window, and it's more so going to affect the operators more than anyone else beyond the public notice and things of that nature.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
See, Eric's answer is a little different from Mr. Cooksey's answer. His answer is August to September is a tight window, but it can be done. Eric's answer is, we making all these other route changes. We're not interested in all these other route changes. Those are
No.
on the books. We're only interested in 47 Lower Richland area.
And I'm not hearing anything. I'm hearing from both Mr. Cooksey and from Eric that we have a board meeting in 2 weeks. That's the July board meeting. August the 9th is when you start the process. So we've got, I mean, there's really the burden of getting the work done, it seems to me, is that, but for Eric and the planning staff, they would have to get all the details of the routes and what would be needed in terms of buses and drivers and all of that. Be ready with that at the board meeting, so that whatever gets
They would be
approved by
ready
the
with
board.
that this afternoon if they knew they had to do that.
Well, I'm just trying to summarize, but so that would need to be ready for the board meeting so that the board is looking at the approval of this change in service to be implemented in September. Is that, and then that would be, put it on your calendar in time for drivers to consider when they begin in August negotiating.
Yeah, I'll let Mr. Franklin wants to say something, then I'll
Okay.
chime in, because he runs the Reflex currently. What were you gonna add?
So with the Reflex and getting it changed over, with getting the time frame for RITP dev, the one issue that we're gonna have on our side is we have a separate agreement with the union. So we are gonna be taking bargained work away from Transport Care Services, giving it to RITP dev. So we gotta have some conversations with the union on being able to take the bargain work and have to give it over to RITP dev, or to keep it with us and trying to refocus all that. So in order for us to get in time for him, we're gonna have to have a lot of union negotiations and union talk. So I don't know if we're gonna be able to get that done in time for his change. My change just already took effect. We only do changes twice a year now. My change went in effect, it's going in July 17th in 5 days. We can make the change, but we gotta get with the union to make sure that they're okay with moving bargain positions from one company to another company.
But for that, what I think of, I'm looking at it a little different from you, Mr. and Mr. Cooksey and Ms. Moon. If we don't get the penny, it's no comment. You follow me? That's my frame of reference, is a penny.
Right.
The penny tax that we have to get to keep these jobs and buses running. So when you sit and say, I got to get with the union, do we have one union or two unions?
We have one union, two different agreements.
All right, so don't you amend those things? Do the union ever gripe when it's not advantage to them?
Yes.
All right, but see, so by the board meeting, all this will be done even with the union. Everybody should be included, but everybody should think that we are sitting here taking the beating for the penny. It has to come out of Richmond County. Nobody else is voting for that penny. And the only way to generate what we're doing is service. See, now, what we should have spoken up, because all of us were here, some of us were here, is when we had a fixed route and a penny pass and we start reducing service, regardless to what it was. We never should have done that in areas. And we did allow that to happen.
Also too, with that Route 47, it will require 2 buses to put it back on a fixed route. That's what was on it before when it was a fixed route.
And what's our situation right now with buses?
We're very limited.
Very short.
We're limited, but I want to be on record as saying we got 4 empty buses riding around Columbia all day long. Is it 7 days a week or 5?
That's the soda cap.
That's soda cap.
That's,
I've never seen more than one person on it since it's existed.
those are the only ones that we'll have. I mean, as far as extra buses will be the soda cap.
All right, well, so here's where I'm at. Ms. Glidden, you had something?
I have a question. So on that soda cap, is that soda cap just a thing that basically ride down there around USC?
It goes to West Columbia area
It
too.
goes to West Columbia area. Do anybody ride it from over there in West Columbia around Lexington? Does it go near Lexington Hospital
No,
where the doctor's office or anything?
it goes on
Okay.
Knox Abbott.
Goes to Knox Abbott Drive. How many people catch that bus going off of Knox Abbott Drive? 1 or 2?
Something like that, yeah.
Chicken farm people.
Oh, I can put my money on that. I know what I'm talking about. Because I lived over there before I bought my house, well, before my husband and I bought our house where I am now. Whole lot of people don't ride it over there, yeah. And I have seen some people get on the buses. Do they have to make another connection? Because I've heard people say, I'm going to work at the chicken farm or going over there and do an application. So that means they have to catch 2 buses to get over there at the chicken farm and
It
all that.
depends on where they're coming from, yeah.
Gotcha.
They may have to, yeah.
Okay, that's my question. Thank you so much, Jackie.
All right, so here's where I am with this. The thing that makes me uncomfortable about what we're talking about trying to implement in September is all the unanswered questions. And I would be surprised if we take a motion to the board, this many unknowns in terms of being ready to implement, if the board didn't say to us, the committee hadn't done its work, to come with a completed, not what needs to be done. Now, Mr. Fergus, I get what you're saying about services to people who voted for the penny, but here's what I'm thinking at this point, is if we take the time to do this and have all the answers and the plans in place to present to the board for their approval to implement in January, we're not voting for the penny before January. And so if the people know that there's a plan in place to reinstate, I don't want us to do something halfway right in order to do something 3 months, 4 months earlier. Do you see what I'm saying?
No, because we've asked Mr. Cooksey, how long will it take him to put that together? So
But we are not the staff, Mr. Fergus. We are the board
but
committee.
that's why I'm acting as a board member. We've asked Mr. Cooksey, how long will it take him to put it back together? When you go January, you're going through the Christmas season, and you've already soured Lower Richland off about the penny anyway, based on the service. So and you had an example of a board that goes into West Columbia that doesn't pay the penny or the transportation for the bus. And we conflating that with Lower Richland that pays for the bus. Even before the penny, Richland County taxpayer paid for the bus. So if Mr. Cooksey and Ms. Bowers come back to the board and say it's almost impossible, then board just have to rationalize it from there. But I wouldn't want them to leave a meeting today, say something's gonna happen in January when it can happen in September.
Okay.
If I can, so I think what we need to do is immediately start our conversations with all the stakeholders, like locally here in reference to, we got to talk to our ATU, which is represented on the 2 contracts as part of the conversation. I need to have, obviously a conversation, the comment, with Ms. Bowers, Eric, and also our actual run cutter as well. We just got to end it, and Mr. Franklin, we've got to get in a room and kind of just do a timeline on what's realistic and break this down to come back with good information to know what we can actually do.
Exactly.
If it isn't, you know,
Yeah,
just say,
and I
no,
think
we
we,
can't do
yeah,
it.
that's the way,
We'll get
we're
together.
gonna meet and discuss all the options in timeline on when that can happen.
I agree with you,
All the
Jack.
variables that may come up that may impact this.
And then I think too, that sounds good to me, that stepwise work, staff work that needs to be done. The other thing, Eric, I think we need to be prepared to answer is, we don't make routing changes, recommendations from this committee without looking at our ridership data, so that the decision to move that from a fixed route to a reflex route was based on ridership at the time. I mean, that's always what's the driving force for us to be changing any service. So I think we want to have, know what the ridership figures are
Smooth.
on that too, and what
You're gonna have the
information you're
majority of
getting.
board members can vote to put this route back in. So there's no use in wasting staff time with all this data that means nothing.
But ridership data is what you're citing as
But not-
the key thing. I mean, in everything you've said is that we don't need to be using buses if we don't have the ridership. So I would think the board would want to hear about ridership or prospective ridership, or what you're hearing, or that's telling you that there's a potential ridership there that we aren't serving. I just want to be sure we have as much information for the board to act on.
I'm thinking all staff need to work on is the mechanics of putting it back in. All the other data done out there, hill of beans. You know, we got routes that we had to struggle that had 2 riders on it to get rid of. So our entire neighborhood losing transportation, and we worrying about data. All staff got to do is worry about the mechanic, bring it back to the board. If the majority of the board say install it, it's installed, and we just go from there. This is a Richland County route, a Richland County voter, Richland County taxpayer.
Jackie, how y'all feel about it?
Actually, during that time, when that route was changed from the fixed route to the reflex route, I don't want to keep bringing the name up, but Mr. Ando said that he needed extra buses. And that's what we were told.
So we had an established ridership on the fixed route that would
Yes.
justify continuing the route. That's important information.
Yes, and we were told when Transted was here that he needed some extra buses. So that's why he
Well, that's
changed
a
it.
very different picture from,
Yeah.
what my usual expectation
Well,
is.
it
to have
happened,
that.
it happened.
I'm actually receiving a lot of complaints from the riders in that area about putting the bus back on the fixed route as well. I've been hearing it from the drivers, from the riders.
But that's exactly what the kind of feedback that I thought is important to this kind of discussion.
Yes.
That if we had an established ridership that we changed, then to go back, that makes it a much clearer path for me.
Ms. Moody, you know, we let John Ando do everything he wanted to do.
Well,
We had an established route 17 that ran through a neighborhood with 3 board members, and he eliminated that route and made it flex.
Well,
So this is not a new-
I will have to say, I don't think there's nothing really to be accomplished by talking about things we can't change. And so one thing we can't change is the past, but we do want to make good
Thank
decisions
God he
now.
don't.
And so I think that's what we want to focus on, is how on what basis we make decisions at this point without, what's passed right now is passed, and I can't do anything about that. So, okay. All right, so you ready to vote on the motion?
That, we already voted on that motion. The motion passed. We were just discussing. That
Oh, I
motion passed.
thought the discussion was in,
No.
okay, so do you
Okay.
have that in the record?
No, I don't. I don't have so you asked to amend the agenda, but there was no
I made
discussion.
the motion on the 47 route.
Be
And we
reinstated.
and reinstated and we voted on.
You don't have a
Please.
record?
No, not today. I don't have that today.
Well, we can do it again.
All right, so would you restate the motion then? Let's just keep
That
out.
the Lower Richmond Route 47 be reinstated and the staff look at other improvements that can be done in the Lower Richmond area
So that we're making that as a recommendation to the board.
to the board.
And I'll second it.
And you second it. All right, is there any further discussion? All right, then you call the roll, please.
Mr. Brennan,
Yes.
Mr. Burgess.
Yes.
Ms. Leeton,
Yes.
Ms. Herbert,
Yes.
Ms. Mood,
Yes.
motion carries.
All right, yeah, so now the other part that I missed before our late arrival, having so much fun sitting on I-26, is that didn't quite understand the discussion that came up, that was going on when I came into the meeting. Because we have Mr. Ratio listed as a service committee member,
Yes,
but she's not in the vote.
Ms. Heiser, I
That
can
was
bring
the
you up
part-
to
That's
speed.
when I walked in.
Yes, Ms. Heiser, Attorney Heiser said that she cannot be,
On a committee.
yeah,
The chairman can't
Yes.
be on the committee.
yes.
All right, just good. That's-
Clarify that so we understand it.
I got it. All right, so we know that we asked everybody who's on the committee. All right, so then the vote passes.
Yeah.
And we're ready to move on to the next item on the agenda. And that would be to go back to 5A.
Yes,
Is that
correct.
it? Okay, ready to do that, Mr. McGee?
Yes. Good afternoon. In the past month, some of the items to report on, stop number 1231 is listed as being completed. That one actually has, I think it's been completed for a while. It just had not been moved up on the list here. Also in the past month, we've been coordinating with DOT for an encroachment permit at stop 799 on Decker Boulevard. We've also been coordinating with McIntyre Produce to add a shelter at their facility. And we're still working with Midlands Tech at their Northeast campus to determine the best location for the shelter there. As far as the stop that Mr. Durst mentioned on Zimmelcrest and Broad River, that one is on our list. We've been just having difficulties. It's going to require an easement from the property owner. We've been having difficulties getting in contact. So if anyone was familiar with that property owner, definitely appreciate any input there.
Okay, so, and that was the one that I was hoping that we would get an update on. And so that the issue there is getting, because the shelter would have to be on a private property, that we have to have the permission of the property owner to do that.
That is correct, yes. And that's Broad River Road pretty much for the most part is in that situation. The existing DOT right of way is pretty much at the back of the sidewalk. So
Okay.
that applies to most of Broad River Road.
And is the difficulty been in actually reaching the property owner, or in that he or she has some reservations about
At this step, it has been just, reaching.
just reaching him?
Yes.
So, so can you just provide us, send an email of providing us with the information, the contact information for that person? So anyone who has some way of contacting him, of some knowledge of that, could help with that, could you send that to us?
I can do that.
Mr. Durst, since you're still here in the room, can you think of any other resources that might help us with contacting the property owner?
Well, I don't know who the property owner is, but I do know that there is a large power box right there. So I would imagine that whoever installed that, whether it's city, county, or whoever, probably got permission from the property.
That might
owner.
be a way to track it down. Jack, could you follow up on that
Okay.
to see who gave permission for that? I mean, and so the contact information.
Because I would just say, that's where a lot of people are sitting, is on top of the power box.
Okay.
Probably in the best option.
Can't he check that through the county, whoever, they will know who the property owner is.
Well, he knows who it is, but he doesn't
Correct.
have- but had not been able to get a response from
From
them.
the van, for the person.
That-
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, I mean, we can look up through Richland County, who the property owner is. It's just sometimes contact information is not that great from the public
You would
sources.
pursue that, and if you can let us know in some way so that anyone who has any personal knowledge or relationship with them could help you out in terms of making a connection.
Yes.
All right, any other questions for Mr. McGee or comments? All right, then we'll accept that report as information and move on to the 5B, the Lucius and River Superstop update.
All right, thank you to the members of the committee. As far as Lucius and River, again, the site is set to be completed by the end of August. And the board did approve for us to move the implementation date to January. So we're still working through a lot of those plans. We're gonna work through, again, just kind of vamping up some public outreach strategies beyond what we were doing before, because we have a little bit more time to play with. We did get some recommendations of some alternatives for the restrooms. We have been able to make contact with those individuals, those companies, and now it's just a matter of locating the grant funding for the install and trying to make the selection as well. And then from there, just trying to go through the install process. Right now, we haven't developed a true timeline of what it would take from start of identifying the funds to actually construction. But from what we have, one company out of Oregon, they have mentioned to us that the install for them, it doesn't take too long, which is about 30 to 90 days. So the earlier we get on to that, I think that we should be in, I guess, good standing with the January implementation date, but we're doing all that we can on our end to kind of keep the project moving forward.
So the funding, you're working closely with Michelle on that, I'm sure, that
Correct.
funding sources. What about the stability of the land and the cracks in the concrete? What's going on there?
So as of right now, they're still going through the motions of identifying surveying the site. They have released the actual schedule, and part of that schedule, we actually supposed to meet with them tomorrow. The meeting is still scheduled, but as of right now, from what I understand, they're still on schedule, but they haven't really quite given us much more details with why there's cracks in the concrete or anything along those lines. So we don't quite know at this very moment.
So the survey will tell us why it's happening, and then the contractor will need to tell us what it takes to correct that, to make.
Correct.
Okay.
And they have started breaking up some of the concrete over there as well.
So to see what's underneath,
Yeah, the part that was damaged on the curb, they have already torn a lot of that up.
Yep.
To redo it.
okay. And I don't want to just put something new that'll break up again. You know, that's what, I want to know what's underneath there so
Yeah.
that we're sure that this actually fixes the problem. Okay. All right. Any other questions for Eric on that? All right, Mr. Cooks, you want to go ahead with our operations report?
Yes, I will get through this. We just currently only have one reported COVID case. I included in the packet just some information just to kind of show you kind of where we are, not just us in South Carolina related to doses and vaccinations, but right now as far as operationally, we haven't had any impact. COVID. As far as our customer service complaints, overall, we're down. In fact, June 2022, we had 40, and 23, we have 32. So that's an improvement there. We're exceeding our target. We have seen a slight uptick in reference to the safety complaints. And I'll talk a little bit later about that, but a decrease in the reliability. So that's a good thing there. I also want to recognize Mr. Moses Taylor, with RATP there for 43 years. So a lot of experience there. One of our second in line as far as seniority. We have another individual that's 44 years. And then Mr. Marshall Gamble, TCS employee, actually works on the service line 22 years. So we have a lot of experience in those two areas, and like to say, great job to them. And we appreciate everything that they do. Last week, you got an opportunity to meet Mr. Kevin Bundrick, our new maintenance manager. He continues the streak that we've had in reference to 100% on time related to our scheduled maintenance, and we're exceeding our mean distance between road call target miles. So that continues to shine in that area. As far as our on-time performance, slight decrease in this month versus last month, but as far as fixed route, and DART had a slight increase of 0.8%. I will say on the fixed route side, we did have 10 days last month where we hit 79 or better. So roughly about 30%. Those had over 80%. So we had some strong days. We just had a few days, lower days in the earlier part of the month. We just weren't able to recover. But overall, for I guess the dog days of summer, those are pretty decent numbers in that area. As far as our ridership, just a quick overview. Our average daily ridership, we've been beating that for the last 6 months, month to month. So we do see that that positive number in that aspect versus the previous month, however, with a slight decrease from the previous month. So again, we're trending in the right way compared to the previous year. As far as DART's total ridership, down 7.2%. DART did something fantastic this past weekend. I want to give kudos to Mr. Franklin. They had a very intensive customer service training that took place. So congratulations to them on getting that going. And that is something I believe they're going to do quarterly, if I'm not mistaken. And of course, we do that on the fixed route side as well. So again, thank you for that, and keep up the good work in that area. On the safety side, we've only had one personal injury in the last 42 days. So that's a good number. And it was actually resulted in no lost time from work or no workers' comp case. So as we try to continue to push safety equals success. That's a kind of a campaign we're riding out here. So very good for that. So far this month, we haven't had any preventable accidents. So we do see we're trending this year for an organization versus last year in downward in the right direction. So we got a new safety manager. I think I introduced her a couple of months back, Mary, and she's constantly bringing out new ideas, new programs, new things to do, great safety messages. So we continue in that vein. As far as our human resources, I currently have a class of 3 today. It started Monday. I do plan on running another class in about 2 weeks. Just want to kind of continue to stay with our trend versus, our absenteeism and different things with our, turnover rate, just to make sure we're in a good position if it need to expand or whatever the case might be. We'll make sure we have the people in place to do so. We also had, for the month of June, we had our Juneteenth celebration combined with our Father's Day. And then for the 4th of July, we had some extra food we cooked out and things of that nature. So did a good job celebrating the holidays here. And as far as our key performance indicators, so we met our target, exceeded our target with preventable accidents, customer complaints, mean distance between road miles, exceeded our target again on our paratransit On-time performance, as our fixed route is just slightly below the previous month, but we did have 10 strong days throughout the month of June. And that completes my report, and I'm open for any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Cookson?
Mr. Cookson,
Yeah.
I heard you said about the customer complaints. Do you get a lot of those?
We actually do not. I mean, for considering the number of
Yeah.
miles that we drive and the number
Right.
of trips,
Uh-huh.
it was, I think, 30.
Mhm.
And all of those are investigated. We pull video camera.
Right, that's
a full
Yes,
investigation.
A number one.
Everything. And then in fact, next month I'll bring up our quality assurance person who does that, explain her process.
Yeah.
So just to kind of give it to your perspective, I worked at agencies where you might get a couple of hundred a month.
Right.
You get 30, right? 150, 200 complaints. So the number is low compared to how many trips there are. I mean, that's a great number. So, and of course, zero is our goal, don't get me wrong.
Yeah, right.
But
I
if you look at
understand.
it in the big picture,
Right.
it's a small number.
I understood you say about 30, is that what you said?
Yes, ma'am.
And so when we look back at the ridership of 127,000,
Right.
128,000 for 30.
Can I ask another question?
Yeah.
Some of the buses that you have most of those complaints on, are they just certain ones? You don't have to call them out if you don't want to.
Well, we do analyze that. I
Uh-huh.
have that in front of me by route, by bus.
Right, that's what I thought.
We tend to see it kind of spread about, but
Okay.
your higher running routes, like your 3-number routes, like your
Gotcha.
801, 701, 501, those are generally, because you have more people riding.
More people riding,
Tend to get more
more
concerned.
personalities.
Now, keep
clicking.
in mind, 50% of what we do get in is not valid, meaning it didn't
Gotcha.
take place. So of the 30, all of those aren't actual complaints that are valid. Then we look at both valid and invalid. We just report the whole number.
And as I understand it, validity is if someone says the bus didn't stop for me, I was waiting there and the bus didn't, then you go back and look at the film
Absolutely.
of
Look
that
at the
actual
film.
time.
That's
If
right.
the bus
Just
stopped
sure.
there or didn't.
So it's not a judgment call
No,
on whether it's valid or not. It has to be backed up with.
It has to be backed up
The
with
facts.
the audio and video, everything that we have, yes.
I have another question. The way y'all got a meeting out there at the Old Columbia Mall in the back there, 501 and 02, that seemed to be working real good. Cause one day I got off out there and I noticed it was working like clockwork, the buses came up,
Right.
people got on them and they were rolling.
Okay, good to report. Thank you for that feedback.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, cause I go out that area too, and I normally notice it just to see, cause I know how you have some people that are complainers no matter what you do. But anyway, I like to give people where their flowers are,
Right.
and I've noticed they make them connections, the buses are there, and people get on their road.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Cook.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Franklin, you're gonna talk about the DART non-certified passengers. the big strap sailors.
Well, thank you very much. A couple of weeks ago, the common staff, RATV, DAV, and TCS, we kind of met to go over some of the issues that we're currently having and kind of like the total ridership of everything that's going on. So on my report's on the last page of the packet for you. So it kind of breaks down a number of requested versus what we have now versus what we were pre-COVID or at least a year ago. So our number of trips have increased, our number of requests have increased, plus our number of length of time that people are on the bus and also how long that they're traveling to. So pre-COVID, we were like 22 miles, was the trip length. Now we're over 22 minutes and we're now over 31 minutes. The average length of the trip was 5.62 and we're up to about 8.75. A lot of that has to do with the area that we're servicing. And the other part, what we just found out was from Able, South Carolina, is there's a couple of their providers that went under. So now they're coming and getting certified from DART. What we have is, we went through a couple things and we have a couple recommendations. Currently, if you want to ride DART, you go through the application process. However, we are picking that passenger up at no cost and bringing them to their assessment. Couple concerns on that is, one, the passenger has not been through any travel training and doesn't understand the process, doesn't understand the rules of the road or anything because they haven't been through their assessment yet. And the other part is we're looking at liability. If we have a passenger on board that is not currently certified, and God forbid, we're knocking on wood, if they're involved into an accident,
Right.
who's the liability fall on? Well, our recommendation going to the service committee to bring to the board is to, within the proper notification period of 30 days, that we let people know that we stop doing that. Because we are getting 30 to 50 passengers certified every month, but those are taking spots that we have to give. So we can't give somebody a ride to a doctor's office or to dialysis because we have to give a free ride to get their assessment. We don't have a problem with reassessments if you need to be recertified because you're already a certified passenger. We'll take you to ABLE to get recertified, no cost, because that's, an agreement, but it's your initial.
Right.
That's one of our recommendations, and the other
Is to
recommendation.
stop the no-cost rides to assessments.
Well, to stop
I mean,
a person being transported by DART to an assessment when they haven't been certified. Because they're going to that appointment to see if they're eligible to ride DART.
Okay, I got you.
So they're not DART clients yet.
Got you.
I got you.
Yeah.
They're just in that process.
In that process, okay.
So that's one of our recommendations. And the other recommendation is part of the process, they're conditionally certified, unconditionally certified, or denied. If you're conditionally certified through the paratransit, complementary paratransit regulations, it means you can't ride fixed route. You have determined enough evidence that
That's the conditional.
that's conditional, that you cannot
Not right.
ride fixed route. That's why you're conditionally certified on DART. So we pick you up, take you where you gotta go. Well, currently, we are offering those DART passengers free ride onto fixed route. They get a DART card and they can ride fixed routes for free. Well, we're kind of like Arlene and I were discussing is, well, if they're conditionally certified, that means they are not able to ride fixed routes. So why are we offering that service? So we have the cost of the card that they get. They're constantly losing it. We're going down. So the other recommend is because fixed route is cheaper, it's half the cost of DART, is that we eliminate DART riders riding fixed route for free because they're getting that at a reduced cost anyways, because DART rides are $4 to and $4 coming back. So every time we pick you up, it's a $4 charge. So if you want to go to 3 places and I pick you up 3 times, it's $4 each time, which in a fixed route system on the common fixed route system, if they buy an all-day pass,
Right.
it's cheaper. And a lot of the areas that we go to, we service, the fixed route can be achieved. So that's what our current recommendations when we met, unless there's something I spoke on or didn't bring up, Marlene.
Well, I think those were, when Jack and I met, we thought that the recommendations that were submitted was something that we could support. And at the time that I guess these processes were put in place, that was a good reason during that time. And it was during the time that our executive director wanted to look at, for the very last recommendation, he was trying to look at a way to reduce the number of passengers that were riding DART. So that's why he put in place that if they could ride fixed route, depending on where they were going, that they would take advantage of that mode of transportation versus using DART. So, but based on hearing from Mr. Franklin, Mr. Cooksey, Jack and I, we support the recommendation from them that we should maybe look at discontinuing this service.
Hold on just a minute, because I do have a question, but Michelle, you have your hand up.
I was just wanting to provide historical reasoning for this.
Okay.
Since since the inception of the CMRTA, we have provided this service for allowing any certified DART rider to ride the bus for free. And the thought behind that was that the cost for paratransit is so very, very much more than for the bus that's gonna be out on that route, regardless of whether somebody's on it or not, that we would encourage that anytime we could, ridership to shift from paratransit to fixed route. So I just wanted to provide that historical information.
Okay, so here's what I'm trying to understand here. You said that there's a conditional approval, that's the ones that went, and the condition is that you are unable to ride a fixed route bus.
Correct.
Well, I mean, a free service on something you are unable to ride.
I was gonna say that when the individuals are certified, if they're eligible, it's unconditional and it's conditional. So the conditional certification is that they can ride, or maybe doing certain times, and maybe like it may be they can't ride because of the weather. So their doctor may have said that for some reason, like maybe they have dialysis on this particular date. So that's conditional. So condition would be they could they cannot ride the fixed route based on certain conditions. So there are two different, it's unconditional and conditional.
Okay, so then we haven't talked about the unconditional, or is that what we're talking about?
Well, the unconditional is that there are no conditions. They just aren't able to ride fixed route service. So what was put in place was they could use a card. We had a card for them, for everybody that was eligible, that was considered to be eligible to ride DART. They had the opportunity to ride fixed route free.
This is for the unconditional.
It's really for the condition. It's for anyone that can ride DART. So it's conditional and unconditional. So they get blue cards to ride fixed route free. So apparently they all are getting these free blue cards when they become certified for DART.
All right, so, I mean, it makes sense to me, what you describe as conditional makes sense to me, that they might on an ordinary day be able to ride the fixed route, and if they can, that's to the DART, that's to the Comet's benefit for them to do that, because it costs us less than having to send somebody to pick them up. But except weather conditions, or I understand that. What I don't understand is if the unconditional client is certified as unconditional, means they just aren't able to ever ride a fixed route. What would they do with a card that says they could ride free?
Well, I'm not for sure, but my thing is, I guess when the card is issued, I don't think there's anything on the card that lets us know if it's conditional or unconditional. I think it's just a card that says that you are a DART passenger.
All right, so when ABLE is the one who does this for certification, and so when they issue the certification, they are the ones that are giving them the card?
No, not at that time. So ABLE does the assessment, then they will send, and I basically been the ones been looking at their assessments.
Okay.
And I make the determination if we should support their assessment or their recommendation.
All right, and so then the Comet actually issues the certification and the card. So all that you're asking is that for those clients that are unconditionally certified for DART, that we no longer issue a free ride card.
Yes.
That's the recommendation. The conditional one stays because there are times that they would be able to do that.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
what do we gain by doing that? Is it financial?
Well, part of what, I think there's a slight charge they get for some of the cards, but when they go and get their DART card, they go down to Comet Central, and Comet Central calls my staff to find out if they're a DART rider and what's their number, because they're assigned a number. And we tell them, yes, they are, here's the number. we can't tell them because of HIPAA if they're conditional, unconditional, or anything like that.
Right.
Just that they're- So then they issue out the ID. Well, some of the confusion comes into play is that now this passenger who has a DART card, when DART picks them up, says, I have a DART card, I want a free ride. It's like, no, that only works on fixed route. So a lot of it is the confusion of when to use it and not to use it. And the other part is having these cards in, even though there's a charge for them, there's still a stock that has to be kept into place. So there's a charge for the stock, there's a charge because they take their picture, I believe.
Yes.
So there's special ink and there's special printers, and all that stuff that we could probably not, we would be able to save by not having as many in stock. Because right now we have active, over 4,100 active riders that are certified in the DART system. When I first started tracking this was in January, there were around 3,800. So we're increasing month over month, and Arlene can tell you, we are increasing month over month, but as we're increasing that, you have to have enough on hand in case somebody's ID is no longer, it's expired, or they lose it and they need another one. That could be a burden of cost that the Comet is having to keep these on hand.
Y'all issued those cards.
The Comet is correct.
Common is.
But I'm still trying to think, what, if it's recommended that you stop, what does the Comet gain by stopping?
Part
Does
of.
it free up buses or?
Well, we're part of regulations, right? Stating that if they're unconditionally, you're proving that they cannot ride fixed route. So if they're jumping on board and riding fixed route for free, then technically if they want to ride fixed route, we should be reevaluating them to maybe go to conditionally, that they can ride us to go to the doctor or whatever. But if they want to go to Walmart to go shopping or whatever, they can ride the fixed route. That moves this passenger who's constantly riding, booking 4, 5, 10 trips a week to only booking 2 or 3 trips a week on our side and moving them to the fixed route side.
See, we've experienced over several months, DOT passengers coming in, invading the board meetings about how service was. Cutting service, stopping, and we've gone through that. But I still don't hear anybody say, what do you gain? Michelle has said, those buses gonna run around in that circle, whether they're empty or one person's on it. So what does it matter if that DOT person is on that bus? Because you give it to us for data of passengers. You don't give us a report and say I'm minusing out DOT passengers on the fixed routes.
I think what I'm hearing is that there's a question being raised about the validity of the assessment.
Yeah.
If you're saying, if they are assessed and they're judged to be unable to ride a fixed route bus, and then we say, well, let's give you a ticket and people ride it, then it really raises a question for me about, I think an audit or an examination would look at why is the system bearing the burden of the cost of DART rides for people who can ride fixed route? Do you see what I'm saying? So I think that's the underlying principle. It sounds to me like the other part of the cost is that for all of those people to have cards, you have to maintain the cards as accurate, and to maintain that many cards for people who our records say are unable to ride a fixed route bus. That's an investment of time and maintenance and upkeep that doesn't make sense to me. So the recommendation, I'm going back again to the recommendation from Ms. Franklin that Arlene says they've looked at and agree with, is that for people who, that DART clients that determined by the assessment to be unconditional, they cannot ride a fixed route bus, will no longer be issued fixed route cards.
I have a question.
Yes,
I'm sorry, I had my hand raised. So
I'm
I didn't-
sorry, Tina. Go ahead.
Well, no, okay, a couple of questions. I too don't understand if you can't ride the fixed route bus, then why do you need the card? But my other question is also, is it only that individual who can use the card?
Yes.
Like, is there an ID that says, so that it's only them that can get on the fixed route?
So your question really has to do with whether they get a card, but then somebody else uses that card.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I hear people saying here, nodding and saying, no, it's tied to that person's ID.
Tied to that person's name, their client number, and they also get a picture, so it's their picture on that.
Because that's a part of the cost of maintaining all of these cards, is that they have to be specifically for an individual.
Now, and I guess the other thing I will say too, and I'm sorry, that's my own alarm. Sometimes are we considering whether or not they have a person with them when they're on the fixed route?
They are a part of the assessment, and when they come through, whether they're conditional or unconditional, part of it is there's a recommendation for a PCA or a personal care attendant. If the PCA is authorized, then that person can have that PCA with them on DART side, and there's no cost for that PCA to ride. Now, there is a cost for guests or visitors, but they have to apply during that time frame that they want to have a personal care attendant. If we can't force a personal care attendant on someone if they don't have anybody around, or whether or not it's been approved by ABLE. So ABLE looks at all that, and they're the ones that make their assessment. Now, I know conditionally versus unconditionally, I think conditionally we're around 7 to 8% of all of our passengers are conditionally certified.
7
rest
to
of
8.
7 to 8%.
7.
Yeah, but
7 to 8.
7 to 8.
So.
But can I clarify though? I just want to clarify because I wasn't really referring to DART. The scenario I'm thinking about, only because I was in a wheelchair recently, is my cousin was with me everywhere I went. And so if someone that's a DART customer gets on a fixed route, I'm just trying to determine, could they use that for the other person, or that's not a possibility?
That's just for the individual who's it's assigned to.
Yeah, it's assigned to, it should be.
The other person has to pay.
So the other person who was with them would have to just buy a ticket to ride the bus.
Correct. And piggyback on your, what you just said, I was on the bus the other day coming from the doctor. And there was this lady got on, and she was in one of those chairs, like you said, but she was really, she was maneuvering that chair correctly. And the bus driver just stood out to make sure everything was in order. And I said to myself, gosh, she really got that down pat. And then the bus driver, after she gets herself established, they lock her in. Am I correct? Yeah. That's what I thought I saw. Okay, all right. They got it together now. When they get on there, they be wooling them big chairs around.
Make it safe on the drive. All right, so did that answer your question, Ms. Shepherd?
It did.
All right, so I understand now what that recommendation is. Now I want to back up and have one more question about the first one was about the free ride to the assessment. So here's what my question is. I'm trying to think about the population that uses DART. And if you have somebody who requires that kind of help to get to the medical appointment, then what we're saying is, but it's really up to you to find some other way to get to your assessment. Do we know whether there are other sorts of resources that people can use? Because I'm thinking, everybody might not have another way. Are there other? Does like senior resources have medical rides or no?
I met with Senior Resources not too long ago. They're kind of limited on the number of staffing that they have versus vehicles, so they're very, very limited.
They're very limited.
They're, Uber, Lyft, they have opportunities there. What we're really coming down to is it's a non-certified passenger. They're not part of that.
I
and we're
understand
taking
the
them the
concern that you
liability.
have about our transporting.
Right, it's that liability on
Liability.
that part. And some people that, if you look at their qualifications, we're not there, Arlene's not there, we're not seeing, what's going on in the assessment. There are people who are blind that get certified on DART, and it could be the location in which they live is unsafe for them to get to a fixed route system. And that's kind of like why somebody who's visually impaired could get it when you see visually impaired on a fixed route bus. You're like, well, so there's a lot of
Things that go into.
a lot of
that you have to
factors that
look
go
at.
into that, right? So the first recommendation really is it's not the free ride part. I mean, that cost is whatever. It's more based on the liability aspect of if something were to happen, they're a non-passenger certified passenger, who assumes the liability if something were to happen, even if after they go to their assessment, ABLE says, you don't actually qualify for the service. So that's where that recommendation is. Yes, I know what you're saying is if you need the service, apply. They can work with ABLE, and I'm sure ABLE can figure out a way of how they can assess, whether it's via phone, Skype. There's a lot of different options that they can do, but who's got the liability? And that's where that's where the whole discussion really came from.
Okay, and of course, my underlying concern is that I want us to be, when we're trying to provide a public transportation service to people with disabilities, that if we stop the stream coming in because we don't have any way to help them get qualified to get the bus.
Well, most can ride fixed route. And they can take the bus to Able. We have a bus there's a bus stop right in front of Able. So they can catch the bus to Able if they're able to ride fixed route and to get their certification.
But we're talking about people who theoretically can't ride fixed route. I mean,
well, a lot of them can
But
because they do both. A lot of them do both.
But this is why I was asking, they could if they had someone with them.
Yeah, they had someone with them as well.
So they might have somebody with them to go
Right.
to catch the fixed route, to go to the assessment.
Right.
I see what you're saying. Okay, so that sounds more doable than if you, then my concern would be, if they didn't have a way.
And I've seen people on there, like you said, Jackie, that they've had people with them, you know what I'm saying?
So I'm going to defer to Arlene, who's our expert in looking at making sure that we're doing things right. And you're okay with this?
Well, I guess in terms of the assessments, if we want to give free rides, it's more like an option. And I think it's something that we just put in place that we want to assist and provide more benefits from our end. But I think that in talking to Dennis and some of the issues they're having in terms of the individuals who are certified and they're not having enough space for everybody, I think this will be an opportunity to free up more space for those individuals who are certified.
And I do get that part too, that in fact, if we are providing the free ride to the assessment, that's a ride that's not available to somebody who might need to be going to the doctor. Okay, so we might have beaten this one to death, but let me just say, then to restate what I understand Mr. Franklin is proposing, and that we would need a motion that we approve the recommendation from TCS that we no longer provide free rides for people to be assessed for their DART eligibility. That's the first recommendation. And the second recommendation is that we no longer provide free fixed route passes to people who are unconditionally certified to ride DART. Is that correct? Right, so is that a motion to that effect? Make somebody willing to make that motion?
Can we separate those motions?
Sure, that'd be fine. All right, so I'd entertain a motion that we recommend to the board that we no longer provide free DART services to people for their assessment of eligibility to ride DART services.
Second, so move.
All right, so Ms. Herbert makes the motion, a second to that.
Oh, I'll second it.
Ms. Wheaton seconds.
Yeah, let's go.
All right, any more discussion? All right, then let's vote on that first motion.
Okay. Mr. Brennan? Mr. Fergus?
No.
Ms. Wheaton?
Yes.
Ms. Herbert?
Yes.
Ms. Mood?
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, so now we're ready for the second motion. I'll need a motion that we recommend to the board that we no longer provide free fixed ride passes to clients who are unconditionally certified for DART services.
Make one correction there. I think right now it's available to anyone that's DOT certified. It's not just conditional or unconditional. It's just that if they're DOT certified, then they are able to ride the fixed route bus.
Well, I think I'm making a distinction in that motion.
Okay.
Between those.
But how would you know?
That's what I'm saying. So I don't, so from my end, wouldn't know. So if a person is certified, then they just go and ask for the fixed route pass.
You don't get anything from ABLE that says they're conditionally or not non-conditionally
Yeah, we
certified?
have that, but I'm saying at the time that they go in to request the pass for the free fixed route, I don't think there's anything that.
In writing there, is that what you're saying?
I don't think it's anything in writing that lets us know if they are conditional or unconditional.
Well, wouldn't
I don't
that just
think-
be another box to check on the certification?
Well, it's when they call up to get their number, their client ID number, the simple thing is we can say is they're not eligible for a fixed
Okay.
route pass. Because we can see if they're conditional or unconditional.
Well, what we don't, we need to be able to let people know that up front, so people don't show up for their pass and learn at that point.
So when they receive their letter of approval or they're eligible for DOT eligibility, it lets them know if they're unconditional or conditional. So
Right.
they receive that and that information is given to DOT.
Okay,
But
so,
I would
and
just
the client has that.
Yes. they
So,
can-
so they can be told when the certification is done, what that means.
Right.
Okay.
So actually, there's some language presently about the free pass, then that has to be amended in the document. If there is something written online or in a brochure, then that has to be amended. So
It
that
has to
they'll
be
know.
once the board, if
Right.
the board approves it.
Right.
All right,
Michelle has her hand up again.
okay, Michelle.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to point out that people that tend to get unconditional approval for DART tend to be people that it's obvious that they are unable to ride fixed route for whatever reason. I don't know that you're experiencing that as an issue right now of anyone who has unconditional DART approval riding fixed route, because I really don't think they would be able to. But that's just my 2 cents.
Okay. So we may be making a change for a relatively small few group of people is what you're saying. All right, so with that statement of the motion, is someone willing to make that motion?
Madam Chair.
That we'll let me see if I can state it right, the motion would be that we would limit issuing free passes to those fixed route, to those DART clients who are conditionally certified. Yes, Mr. Coates.
Sorry, I didn't interrupt you. On this latter piece that we've been talking over here for a minute, I just think that, I don't even think that you should vote to take this to the board right now. I think the more, because there's still a lot of questions around this, I think it just needs to be represented. And maybe the question may look different, kind of reworded on, you know, conditional, unconditional. Now we got a little bit of the history of what's what, because it's still not clear fully what we're trying to do on that particular piece. The other piece.
So you're
is that
asking us if we
I
would
think
consider
we should
deferring
table
this
it
for,
till next-
till, no.
till next month,
All right, so-
where we
all
can
right.
meet with staff again and rediscuss specifically what this means.
And then we should take on what we've done. We spend majority of this meeting try to eliminate a service from the least among us. I mean, sometimes we have to wonder why we don't enough time to public service. Because that's what we did for the last 25 or 30 minutes.
Yeah, and I think I get I get that. I understand what you're saying in terms of people being able to ride the bus free if they have some
That's
disability.
how we fund it.
But
Federal
then,
government look at our ridership, and that's how we get
Give us
money
that
from the
money.
federal government. And no, not, since I've been on the board, have I ever seen a ridership and said, I'm gonna eliminate DOT and all this from this because they're not eligible to run, and this is what we put in our records. Everybody that get on the bus, that bus run around that circle, we use that data at the end of the day for funding from the federal government.
yes,
State government
but
and
we do
everything
get, a part of our funding is based on ridership. You're right. You're right. I get, my only concern would be that if we are providing a ride that costs us $20 to somebody who really can ride the fixed ride bus, but that really, that's the, if we're raising questions about whether the certification is valid or not, that would be my only concern.
Nobody in here got a medical degree. So we
That's
can't
why
even do
That's
that.
why we contract with Able, because they're the experts on that.
Um,
All right, so I'm going to just set this aside, this second motion aside, not make a second motion at this time, and we'll take that up at a later date. Does that cover what we need to do? All right, so, so we've finished with that item, and we go on to the ridership analysis. Eric? We don't have.
Yeah, no, so, thank you to the members of the committee. We do not have it, this month. We will, pick back up next month. We have had a conversation about what the format would be, for the ridership analysis. Blake was, instrumental with helping us with that at one point. And so now we're just catching up to get all the ridership reports in order. But we do, accept the data that was presented from RTP Dev in the previous month.
And of course, the ridership analysis that you're doing is a more detailed route by route, and there's a 1 month delay in that, so we're.
Correct.
Basic ridership now.
And it's only one other thing I would like to mention as I close out. I did mention that we have reached out, and this is as it relates to Lucius and River. I just want to make the correction for the sake of the notes. So we did reach out to some vendors, but it will take a formal RFP process. And I was corrected by one of the staff members because I just want to make sure that the narrative behind it is there. So we will have to send it out for RFP because of the dollar amount for the project. So the aggressive time.
And that's for the restroom facilities.
That is correct on the
We have
site.
to go through an RFP process. Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
You definitely need them restrooms. You definitely need those restrooms so that you go ahead and do what
That's
you need
why
to
we
do on that.
continue to pursue that. All right. Is there anything else to come before the committee? All right, we just need one more motion to adjourn.
Make a motion, adjourn.
And a second. All in favor, raise your hands. Let's go. Pass. All right, thank you all.